All right, I call the September 18th, 2018 Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:47 p.m. Chair would entertain a motion for consideration of claims.
Okay. Your Honor, I would move for consideration of claims to be paid in the amount of $350,826.61. Elon credit card in the amount of $2,246.06. Payroll and liabilities for August 31st, 2018 in the amount of $489,472.33 for a total of $842,545.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on those? I think I would note that this is a change from what had been originally sent out. And that's due to adding the key lime air for air service revenue guarantee in the amount of $106,611.30. I want to make sure that's clear in case anyone was looking at the agenda and wondering why it's different. I had a question about this that I brought up to Ms. Harris just earlier, and I want to get the exact number. It was about the repairs. Do you remember speaking about that? What's the number for that one?
I do. It is, I don't have the page number. It's claim number 28497 in the amount of $22,270.84.
I was just curious, was that expected? I mean,
It was not. It was for, the charges were for a street sweep, or road grader repair, excuse me, and it was an unanticipated expense. The money was in the budget for the streets and alleys line item, vehicle and equipment maintenance. Their total budget for the year was $37,500. With this road grader repair, it puts them at 74% of their allowable budget, so it was within their budget allowance. They still have $9,754 available for the rest of the year. I did speak with Mr. Butterfield about the road grader, and he said that it is a piece of equipment that we not only use in the spring, but also year-round, and we use it quite a bit in the winter, so it was a requirement that we get it repaired before the snow flies.
good call. All right. Anything else? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Anything else that we need to talk about?
Your Honor, we have nothing additional.
Okay, then the meeting's adjourned at 6:50 p.m.
I now call the September 18th, 2018 regular meeting of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. Would Councilmember Godey lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and after that, Councilmember Schatz will offer an invocation.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the opportunity to serve this great community. Thank you for placing individuals in our community who have the willingness to make our community a better place. Please continue to guide us in making the best decisions for our community. In the name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would the city clerk please conduct the roll call?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilman Lance Godey.
Here.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Here.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilwoman Rebecca Schatze.
Here.
Mayor John Baker.
I am present. I'd entertain a motion to excuse Sean Peterson this evening.
Motion to excuse Sean Peterson.
Second. Moved and seconded to excuse Sean tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. I declare that we do have a quorum. Chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. Any discussion?
Your Honor, I would move that we remove item number 13 from the agenda.
I'm not hearing a second on that.
Second.
Thank you, Kyle. Discussion on it?
What's the,
I guess.
That's the resolution.
I know what it is.
I think it needs a little work before we present it officially.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? All in favor of removing number 13, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and the motion passes. Communications from the floor. Citizens' comments. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council regarding an item that's already on the agenda will be given an opportunity to speak later on. I would ask those individuals who wish to speak, address the council this evening to approach the podium and identify yourselves for the record. Consent agenda. Would the city clerk please read the consent agenda items by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Approval of the minutes, September 4th, 2018, regular council meeting. Approval of the minutes, September 11th, 2018, work session meeting. Approval of the minutes, September 18th, 2018, finance committee meeting. Approval of the finance committee recommendations for September 18th, 2018. And approval of the Riverton Municipal Court report for the month of August, 2018.
Thank you. Are there any items that require further discussion?
Yes, Your Honor. Recommendations from the Finance Committee, bills to be paid in the amount of $353,826.61, Elon credit card in the amount of $2,246.06, payroll liabilities for August 31st, 2018 in the amount of $489,472.33 for a total of $842,545 even.
Even? I'll beat it. Okay, that doesn't happen very often. All right. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Your Honor, I would move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and the consent agenda has been passed. The next item is Wind River Visitors Council Tourism Economic Impact Presentation. Paula McCormick.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Second time's a charm here. We've got this working, so very excited. I did give you some handouts. You have a handout of some lodging tax facts, and you have a two-sided sheet with some economic impact numbers so that when I cover them in the slide presentation, you'll still be able to have these tourism industry economic impact numbers that you can use. And we are always available, obviously, for questions. So I am Paula McCormick with McCormick Marketing. I am hired by the Wind River Visitors Council to do their marketing, and I've done that for 20 years. I have two board members here. So we have Kathy Klein and Ryan Preston, so they are your appointed members for the Wind River Visitors Council Board. We have members, of course, from each of our communities. So we obviously work with a mission. Our mission is obviously to stimulate tourism and encourage people to our destination. These are all your board members, so you have your two Riverton appointed members, and here are the rest of the members appointed by all your joint powers, board members, Lander, Riverton, Du Bois, Shoshone, Hudson, and the Fremont County Commissioners. And we work with board-directed goals and objectives. I will leave a marketing plan with you, and that has the written goals and objectives in it. But the main ones, if you don't get into all of the strategies for it, is basically we're trying to grow the tourism economy. We are championing our Wind River Country brand. That is Fremont County's tourism brand, Wind River Country. We always try to maximize our partnerships because what we collect in lodging tax, we need to leverage that with the Wyoming Office of Tourism and other grant programs and things so that we can maximize as much funding as we can to put into the tourism promotion so we can turn around and generate a lot more economic impact in our county. And obviously another goal from the board is to make sure that our lodging tax board is operationally excellent and that we continue the lodging tax as a sustainable source of promotion money. So the lodging tax is 4%. That is the maximum allowed by law, by state statute. It can be 2%, 3%, or 4%. And in 2010, we increased it to 4%. And so in 2014, we renewed it at 4%, and 80% of the people voted for the renewal. That's probably one of the highest, I think that's probably the highest percentage of any tax to be voted on for. So 80% is a pretty good number. We're pretty proud of that. So, of course, that means in 2018, we will be, the lodging tax will be on the ballot in November, and it is the only tax that will be on the ballot for Fremont County, the only local tax. So there will be a political action committee called the Fremont County Tourism Coalition that will be working to help pass that lodging tax. So on the economic impact, we've been able to, we get information from the Wyoming Office of Tourism every year. They create a survey, and they can tell us county by county how much the tourists spent in each county over the last year. So in 2007, we had almost 500,000 overnight visitors. They spent over $131 million, and that was up 6.3% over the previous year, which is good. And included in that number is a 5-day bump from the eclipse, which of course Riverton was a big supporter of, and that actually made a difference. In the 5 days, just the 5 days around the eclipse, you can see the numbers of how many visitor days, and they spent $3.7 million and 160,000 more state tax receipts, and the lodging tax collections were up. And the good news is that the people that were surveyed in Fremont County who came for the eclipse, 44% of them said they'd come back. A lot of them had not been here before. And I was talking to somebody up in Du Bois, and they said that at the chamber specifically that they have gotten that comment multiple times this year, that they came back to Du Bois to vacation in Du Bois because they'd only been there for a day and a half or 2 days during the eclipse previously. So I believe that is actually happening. So where did the travelers spend their $131.6 million? And I like this pie chart because it really shows how many diverse industries that tourist spends money in. It's a lot of people think that it is only lodging, and of course lodging actually isn't the largest number. It's actually the third largest number at $20.6 million. So they spend more at restaurants. There's a lot of travel. That other travel involves some gas that is not included in the gas and car rentals. There was $1.2 million in air travel. That number was up over last year. I'm sure you would know that. And then groceries and food stores and shopping and arts and entertainment. So all those numbers shows that dollar trickles to a lot of different businesses, a lot of different industries. And it is the second largest economy in Wyoming. So just in Fremont County, we had over 1,400 jobs, almost $43 million in wages, and since 2000, that's a 71% increase in spending by tourists in Fremont County. So it continues to grow. The good news for the city is that tourists paid $2.2 million in local tax and $4.6 in state tax. And that is up almost, 4.6% over the previous year. So while we know minerals income and all the taxes are down on that, tourism's done its best to try to backfill some of that hole. And it's a bright spot, obviously, in our economy. So visitors did pay 11% of all the county sales tax. And if it weren't for the $6.8 million that the tourists were spending in taxes, then the average county household would have to pay another $431 in local taxes just for existing government services if all services remained the same. So we like it when the tourists come and buy things and contribute to our sales tax. So in the lodging tax collections, here's a brief little history over the past few years of how much is actually collected in Fremont County. So this is how, these are the dollars. It's always running around somewhere around $700,000. And we had a bump back in fiscal year 14-15 because it was a lawsuit with Expedia and these other online travel agencies, and the state of Wyoming was part of that lawsuit. And Expedia and these other Orbitz and those types of companies had been booking lodging but not paying any state or local sales tax or lodging tax. And when the states won that lawsuit, why there was a bump, and everyone in our state received some additional funds for almost 5 years of back pay on those taxes. And then we did have a bump last year, and we were up 5% due to the eclipse and some recent increases in Riverton's lodging tax collections. I think that's probably, Ryan might tell you that it's probably part of the Manita Divide field. There was a real bump earlier in the year with some of that, and we saw some new numbers. So we calculate how the lodging tax is collected by zip code for our communities. So Du Bois collects about 28%, Lander collects about 31%, Riverton collects about 40%, Shoshone is less than 1%. And over the previous year, they move a little bit each year, up or down or about the same. And Du Bois has been increasing, Lander's been just about the same, and Riverton, of course, had been down that previous year in lodging tax collections. So this council approved our budget several months ago for the fiscal year 18-19. Our fiscal year starts July 1, and this board, I think it was in April maybe, that the city council approved the Wind River Visitors Council budget. And this is the budget we are currently working on as of July 1, and this is how the money is spent, the $700,000. Obviously, the majority of it is put towards the marketing, which is what its intent is. That $175,000 is the money that goes back to our communities. We call them TAD funds, Tourism Asset Development, and I'll get into that a little more. And of course, we committed for the third year in a row, we committed funds to the Fast Air Service Marketing, and that was the $20,000. And I know Kathy knows these numbers, but beyond just what the marketing budgeted for this $20,000, there was also the TAD funds to the different communities, like the Lander Chamber and the Riverton Chamber. They gave each, I think, another $10,000. So there's like $40,000 of lodging tax money that went into just the air service marketing. So that TAD money, that $175,000 that goes back to the communities, it goes back in the percentage that the communities collect. So I showed you that percentage where Riverton was about 40% of all the lodging tax. So if you take 25% of the $700,000 that's collected, about $175,000 goes back to the communities. And these are the budgets that each of these communities have. They are currently delivered all through the chambers of commerce that have their own Destination Lander or Destination Du Bois or Riverton Chamber committees, and that money is then reinvested back in tourism promotion. They give grant programs for your local events, and since the Wind River Visitors Council has no office, it has no visitor center, we have empowered the chambers of commerce to provide the visitor centers in each of their own communities. We think that's a really good strategy, rather than trying to create, where would you build one building in Fremont County to be a visitor center? It just you wouldn't hit all the people. So this way we believe that we have the opportunity to hit all the people that are coming through and provide visitor services. And these are some of the events that when the communities do their grant programs back to events, every community has probably at least a dozen events that get grant funds. That's lodging tax money that goes back to help support your own local events. So these are some of them that last year received grants. And I did want to talk about the Wind River Reservation, because the Wind River Reservation was not a joint powers board when the lodging tax was formed in the late 1980s. And they don't collect a county lodging tax, while I know that their hotels do collect a lodging tax and that money goes back to the tribes. But I want to make it really clear that both casinos have been really, really good partners with the Wind River Visitors Council. While they don't pay lodging tax into the county, they have comped rooms and meals for groups, tours, and tour operators and media people, so that we can host them. It helps our budget, so we don't have to pay for that lodging and pay for the room. And we show people a really, give them a really good impression of Fremont County, and they have helped us in that way. So. And then we budget for projects with them, like driving tour maps, which I think all of you have copies of some of our brochures, the driving tour maps, and we obviously promote the casinos because that is a tourism asset. Casinos are definitely a tourism draw, and other projects that we have done throughout the year. So now I'm just going to talk. That's all the numbers, and I'm just going to zoom through because I know you have a pretty busy agenda this time. I just want to talk about what we do as the Wind River Visitors Council. So how do we market the Wind River Country brand? And I will leave a marketing plan with you, and that is, like I said, over 70% of all the budget goes specifically to the marketing, and that includes the air service funding. So we obviously, in our marketing plan, we talk about branding. We have our 5 targeted customers. We do this year-round. It's not just summer here. We have to try to market tourism all year round. And we have our partnerships and our PR, and we have new areas that we want to grow, and all of that's in our strategies. And we always talk about having a healthy mix of tools. So you have traditional media, your print, your radio, things that you would expect. There's a lot more emphasis these days on digital media, websites, mobile ads on your cell phones, banner ads on different websites, and then now you have to know social media and Instagram and YouTube and all those things. And of course, we always have a PR effort where you try to get free stories in the media, and we're getting really good at that. And then we want to support our own tourism assets and attractions, like support promoting the casinos or support promoting any of our events or museums, things like that. And we work really closely with Wyoming Office of Tourism, where we have a $700,000 total collections a year. The Wyoming Tourism has a $10 million budget each year. So we really want them, when we push something out, we want them to pick it up and multiply whatever results we get by 10. So when we tell our story, our brand, we tell our story visually a lot of times. Our slogan is "Go Beyond Yellowstone," and we really feature a lot of, in our campaign, our ad campaign, we talk about being room to breathe or room to roam or room to explore. So we have a lot of tourism assets. And this is just an example of last year's advertising campaign with the Wyoming Office of Tourism, where we go beyond Yellowstone and we find room to breathe. We do promotions to our domestic tourists, the tourists from America, from the U.S., and we obviously also market internationally. And we use our relationships through the Wyoming Office of Tourism, and that is up, that kind of visitation from foreign countries is up about 38%. And we like international tourists because they tend to spend more per trip, and they might travel a little in the little off season, a little more on maybe the May or June or end of August, September, when things slow down a little bit, and not our peak season. Our website, windriver.org, if you have not seen it lately, please do spend a little time with windriver.org. We're over 100,000 unique visitors, which is really, that's really up in traffic. We do social media all year round. We create these stories, and then we try to get the free media coverage, which is worth tens of thousands of dollars if you had to pay for it. So we invite travel writers and influencers, and we tour them around, and then they create these really good stories. We have a good following on Facebook, over 53,000 fans, and you can just post something and end up with, 1,000 shares, and it just, that kind of thing just multiplies. And if you are not currently posting on social media, when you take a really neat picture of Riverton or someplace that you've been around in Fremont County, you just need to use the hashtag Wind River Country. And that will show up on our website, it'll show up on our Instagram, it'll show up on our feeds. So Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, any of that, make sure you hashtag our Wind River Country and you'll show up on our website. And then we do all this digital and email marketing with e-newsletters and Wyoming tourism e-newsletters and generate a lot of traffic there. We track all these stats so we know where our traffic comes from and where our money's being spent. You have copies of our brochures. We do that in vacation packets. We do our PR. We'd gotten a lot of traffic on, a lot of free PR on the eclipse. And this year we're really getting some very good stories, whether it's rock climbing or Orbit's travel writer came through and posted a great story about traveling in Fremont County. Today we have a hunter who will be pitching stories to Cabela's and all kinds of places. We have a hunter that just did an antelope hunt, bird hunt, and he's fly fishing, I think, today. So we'll get a lot of coverage out of that. Just one story here, when the Wind River movie came out, then Sony was going to launch it in England. And we got a call in December from the Wyoming Office of Tourism that said Sony is bringing over 5 British journalists and they want to promote the Wind River movie. What can you do in February? Okay. So we had to think about this. We had these 5 journalists. We took them snowmobiling on Union Pass. We sent them out with Art Lawson, the tribal fish and game guy, and he threw them in the back of a truck with all their drones and their video cameras and took them out to the bison herd. Yeah, we just had a great time, and just one of the videos of one of the travel writers there from Britain, just his video alone, last time I looked at it, had over 500,000 views. So just one thing that you can do just can get so much coverage. So that's really fun. These are some of the themes we've been working on in 2018 and will continue on 2019. We had all kinds of anniversaries. So we did press releases and a lot of social media things, and a big one really coming up is this anniversary of the women's right to vote. 2019 and 2020, it'll really be pushed out by Wyoming Office of Tourism. They're already doing it. We've put forth a bunch of names of really interesting women in Fremont County that will get interviewed and videoed, and that's a really big one coming up. We, of course, do all the calendar of events to try to get all the tourism events on our website, on the Wyoming Tourism website, and get it out here. We help businesses create packages and deals so that there can be more coverage, that they get more coverage by somebody specifically looking for some type of tourism package. And locally, we try to educate our Fremont County citizens. What's that? Oh, Kyle. Sorry, Kyle. Yeah, there we go. So we have a Help a Tourist, Help Your Town campaign, and we use some of our local ambassadors to speak to our local citizens so that they do understand the value of the tourism industry. And last couple slides, I'm just saying these are a couple of things that we're really focusing on that's a little newer this year, is that we feel that we've got a lot of the summer tourism promotion really right, and it's working because of the increases that we're seeing. So now we want to see if we can do a little more focus off-season with maybe conference and meeting support. Riverton has great facilities, Lander's got facilities, Du Bois has got facilities for meetings. We want to try to do a better job with that, spread some of that out. We want to grow the group tour business. Well, Ryan's helping us out there with some information that he certainly knows in his industry, so we're working on the group tour. And right now, we're trying to figure out, everything from the Google Maps, trying to improve some of those routes that Google Maps does. We're going to work with Search and Rescue to find out where Google Maps, where are the 10 most dangerous places that Google Maps sends people in Fremont County. Like they tell them to go from Du Bois to Pinedale by driving over Union Pass in their rented Ford Taurus. I mean, we don't get it, but that's what it says. So we're going to see if we can influence some things, and there's a lot of other types of mobile technology and Street View, Google Street View and all that we're going to work on and see if we can try to influence and get better information out. We'll continue to support the air service and target that incoming leisure traveler with Fly Riverton. And we'll keep telling our Wind River Country story. Questions?
Thank you, Paula. That's a great presentation, and we're excited about the work that the Wind River Visitor Council does. I think that Riverton helps prosper here, and are thankful. Any questions, council members, that we can?
Any questions for our board members?
Thanks for
They're representing.
coming, Kathy and Ryan, and thanks for representing us on the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Nicely done.
The next item on the agenda this evening is the Riverton, Wyoming Splash Pad Group contract revision. Public Works Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm very pleased to give you this report this evening. We're very happy to enter into the second phase of our contract to build the splash pad. On February 6, 2018, the City Council selected Sletton Construction to lead a design-build team to construct a splash pad in City Park. From that selection, a contract was entered into for a design-build process. That process is a two-phase process. The first phase centered on designing the facility and establishing a construction cost estimate for this facility. Phase one has been completed, and I want to commend Sletton and their consultants for the work they did on that design, because they went through many iterations, they looked at several options and worked with our community to come up with something that I think works well for our vision and for the budget that we have. So with phase one being completed, it is now time to start phase two of the splash pad project, which is the fun part. It's the construction part. To do that, we need to amend the contract that you entered into in February. And that amendment will be represented as an Exhibit A to the existing contract. Basically, what that will be is establishing what we call a guaranteed maximum price to construct the splash pad. Staff has reviewed the guaranteed maximum price submittal from Sletton Construction. We agree with this price, and we recommend the City Council amend the current contract to include this guaranteed maximum price. The splash pad facility itself is designed to have 680 square feet of a pad with 570 square feet of a concrete apron. The facility will have Emerald FX specific features, and these will include 4 ground features, 2 water guns, 2 rain bars, and 3 arm bucket that drop and splash on kids. The guaranteed maximum price that has been negotiated and proposed is $248,956. Once the City Council agrees and chooses to move forward, we ask that you give staff the ability to execute an amendment to the existing agreement to include Exhibit A, and then we'll give a notice to proceed to Sletton Construction to start construction. The design-build team, again, has proposed that guaranteed maximum price. Phase one for the design portion totaled $25,150. This was significantly cheaper or less expensive than what was proposed when we entered into that contract in February. And again, that is a credit to the great design-build partnership that we've had with Sletton and OLC. Between the guaranteed maximum price for construction and the design, the project represents a total of $274,106. And now, this is the fun part because I get to brag about the wonderful committee that we've had in our community for the last 3 years. And we have 3 of them here today. Christina Olson is the chair of the Riverton Splash Pad Group. We have Kelly Godey and Councilwoman Schatza. These women, with several others, have worked tirelessly to raise funds and to make the community aware of this vision. And I really want to brag about them because 4 weeks ago, on August 21st, we sat together and we said, we've negotiated down the construction cost of this to where this is as much as we can get from a construction side, and we're still short on our fundraising side. And these women went out and they raised another $30,000 in 4 weeks. And that's a testament, I think, to our community, and it's a testament to these women who have served as volunteers to make something happen in our community. So I'm very grateful for them, and I'm grateful for their service, and I'm very proud to ask that the City Council give staff direction to amend the contract so we can get this project underway. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to amend the contract with Sletton Construction to begin the construction of the splash pad.
Your Honor, I'd move we amend the agreement with Sletton Construction, as has been indicated by Mr. Butterfield, to include the, I guess, what do we have there? The plan that's been attached to the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Let's get it built.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. Terrific. Okay, so, Christina, would you stand up and
Kelly?
Kelly and Rebecca?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so these are the gals that did the work, okay, that really got this off the ground. This is such a wonderful thing about our community, is that there are people out there that are willing to work and dig into stuff and make it happen. They get a vision and go for it and make it happen. And so the city alone could never have pulled together enough cash to make this go. And with their help, what we could contribute and some grants and that type of thing, we really made it work. So what a wonderful deal. I just so appreciate the effort that you've made. And, okay, so Kyle, what is the construction timeline? Have you got one?
Your Honor, that's still being finalized. We do have a representative I wanted to mention from Sletton here today. He came down from Powell. So again, they really believe in this project as well. We know that we need to get some of the grant money spent before the end of the fiscal year, and in working with the contractor, we feel confident that we can get the majority of it completed before winter hits.
Okay. All right. Great. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thanks for coming tonight. Okay, the next item is a memorandum of understanding, the Eastern Shoshone Business Park. Community Development Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The document before you, in a nutshell, provides a mechanism to dedicate the public right-of-way for the Eastern Shoshone Business Park Phase 1. So we'll have 3 streets constructed beginning this fall and then moving into spring of 19. Because the property is still raw land and is not platted at this point, we've all felt a little more comfortable not dedicating the public right-of-way right away. Only one person laughed. So we didn't feel comfortable, neither group did, dedicating that right-of-way without the improvements being constructed. So water, sewer, storm, the pavement, the curb and gutter, and then the sidewalk section. Inberg Miller has produced the Phase 1 plans, which will be basically the 17 or 2,000 feet north of Walmart, and then about as deep as Walmart. That will consist of Phase 1. And what this memorandum of understanding does for us is delineate how we will dedicate that public right-of-way once construction is completed and give a definitive time. So after substantial completion completed, then we will dedicate the public right-of-way and have a 1-year warranty period. If anything needs fixed, we'll be able to get that done. And that's really what this MOU does for both parties. And with that, I would stand for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Riverton and the Eastern Shoshone Business Park as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, discussion. Mr. Wilson.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to share a few things with you as it relates to this MOU and all the work that went into the preparation of the construction documents to get everything kind of prepared so that we actually could go out to bid and bid this project and try to get under construction very shortly. This was very much a group effort between the city and our design team and myself, and I just have to say thank you to, and you guys need to know this, that staff between Mr. Butterfield, Mr. Tolstead, between Mr. Carr, and between Don Wilhelm, in order to be able to accomplish what we accomplished, which is actually a pretty big project. We established weekly construction meetings, design review meetings. The city attended every one of those meetings. These guys paid particular attention to everything. It was kind of just a total group effort. So as we got our plans completed here at the middle of August, we were able to take them out to bid. The city was able to approve plans. We got things through YDOT. YDOT was part of this group. It was a consolidated effort of everybody, and everybody really worked hard. So I couldn't say thank you more than to your city staff, and you guys did a great job, and we appreciate it. So
Thank you.
with any luck, you'll see some construction activity out there in just a short amount of time.
In a short amount of time.
Short amount of time.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
That's terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, council? Any questions, or all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. Okay. So take from the table memorandum of understanding with the town of Shoshone. The chair would entertain a motion to take the memorandum of understanding with the town of Shoshone off the table.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we take the MOU with the town of Shoshone off the table. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and the motion is now on the table. And I believe we already had a, so we've got a motion. City Administrator's report, do you want to get into that, Tony?
Thank you, Your Honor. At the meeting on the 4th, this item was tabled in order for staff to provide a little bit more information. We did have some questions. During that time period, we have had the opportunity to answer some of those questions as well as provide some additional information. Without going back through the entire agreement and going back through the items that have already been presented, the changes or the additions that I would point out are provided as an update within the existing memo. One is that the town of Shoshone has volunteered to provide fuel if council chooses to approve the MOU. So that is something that is appreciated. Additionally, I believe it was Councilman Larson who asked a question about masks for particulates, as we have been concerned about contaminants due to the likelihood of asbestos being involved. The project is willing to provide those, so we have that assurance. The main question that came about that took a great deal of looking into because pollutants such as the potential asbestos are so specialized, had to do with the liability in that conversation. Essentially, the existing item that you have proposed to you contains within it essentially an indemnification that says that the town of Shoshone is going to indemnify the city of Riverton. However, both organizations are insured by LGLP, which is fine. However, LGLP does not insure or defend against any pollutant-related claims. So if a claim were to be filed, or if there were to be, they would not defend it on either side. They're not for us, not for the town of Shoshone. Furthermore, that same, any judgment, if it were ever awarded, would not be covered by LGLP in that case. Due to the indemnification, if there were ever hypothetically to be a judgment, that judgment would first, of course, apply to Shoshone and then to us if Shoshone couldn't cover it and we were held responsible for a certain percentage that couldn't be covered, we would then be on the hook to cover that percentage, whatever that would be. Of course, this is a hypothetical with a lot of moving parts that we cannot predict. Many different things change that. But if something were to happen with a truck, i.e. we run into somebody's car, that is covered. The exemption applies only to pollutants that may or may not be present. If you remember from the original memo, the area has not been abated because they can't get into the building, so everything is treated as if it is pollutants. We do believe from our conversations that there's likely something in there, but we don't know exactly what. The other item that is semi-associated that nobody could honestly answer is any cases of workman's comp. I don't believe those can, from our conversations, it doesn't sound like it would be very easy to transfer the liability on that. So if there were a claim from a staff member due to something, that would be something that would be hard for us to transfer that claim. If council chooses to approve, it is further recommended that council do so contingent upon all regulatory items being completed. This is largely because one of the items that the group is putting together is I believe it's called a responsible person, and that person's job when removing items like asbestos or the like is essentially to be present and to make sure that things are being done correctly. That is something that they are working on. I do not have an update to where they are at. They are looking for that, and that is something that they have to have, I'm told. That is all the additional information I have for you at this time. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Kyle?
How is this demolition or destruction going to occur? Are we taking wrecking balls? Are we dynamiting it? How is this destruction going to be so that we can put it into trucks and move it to their landfill?
Your Honor?
Go ahead.
It is our understanding that the county excavator will be used by solid waste district operators to demolish the existing structures. Those structures will be wetted using a particular apparatus that they use to do these types of things. It basically creates a giant sheet of water that tries to keep it pretty wet. It will then be loaded into multiple trucks, including ours, which will be then taken to the landfill and then will be disposed of at that location.
So in English, we're taking a track hoe
We're not, sorry.
and with a ball or some type of wrecking device on it and busting down the structures.
Yes.
That comes down, then then somebody scoops it up, puts it into our trucks, we take it to their landfill. During this process, it's all being wetted down.
Your Honor, yes, Councilman, that is our understanding of the plan.
Thank you.
Tim?
This, I guess, presumes that there's going to be involvement from the city of Lander, town of Pavilion, town of DuBois, town of Hudson. Have any of them entered into this MOU?
Your Honor, yes, Councilman, I believe they have. I do not know if their language contains the indemnification clause. That is something that we discussed. I know I have a call from our attorney that is also involved with some of the other communities that if this is passed, then they're going to take our draft and pass it around because it would be a more developed draft.
So I guess that didn't answer my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
They have, yes, they have signed the previous agreement that we added something to.
Oh, okay.
So they have, my understanding is that they have agreements.
But, yeah.
Are they still needing manpower and equipment from us then, with all the other towns that are being involved in this?
Your Honor, we haven't discussed whether or not they have enough or not enough. This is just their request to us. They believe that they can use our trucks and our people in order to expedite it one way or another.
The more trucks they have, the quicker they'll get it done.
Yeah, you can wreck faster than you can haul.
So actually, I guess last week in the wind, one of those buildings partially came down. So this isn't going to take a lot of effort, to knock them down. It's keeping them, So I guess the real challenge for us is if it turns out that there's asbestos there. But what the trick is, I think, is that they've asked for an asbestos certified expert. DEQ has asked for this, right? An asbestos certified expert to be on site. And so then as the buildings come down and he can see what's there, then he should be able to guide the removal and that type of thing so that we can minimize any kind of exposures. Lance?
Your Honor, to Tony perhaps, so that being the case, is that person authorized to just say, yep, that's asbestos, or this stops now and new conversations can occur as a result of that expert being in place? I guess, what's the purpose of the expert? To really have the authority to stop or just to comment?
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
they are treating all of the material as if it's a pollutant. They are treating it all as if it is asbestos. That is the plan right now, hence the wetting. So that individual is probably, I would guess, is probably more there to make sure that it's being wetted appropriately, that they're taking those steps. Because they can't get into the building, we're treating it like it's friable asbestos. Or I shouldn't say we, they are treating it like it's friable asbestos.
So would it be safe to say that the town of Shoshone has the supervisory authority to say stop and wait, or who is designated? I assume it would be the town of Shoshone, but I guess it should be clearer to who has the authority in this demolition.
What are you saying?
And,
Stop?
well, if something I mean, we don't know what's in there in many instances because they haven't been in the buildings for years.
No, they're saying it's all asbestos.
Well, they're treating it as asbestos. They're not saying it's asbestos. There's a difference, I would say.
Your Honor, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Councilman, the way, my understanding of it is the way in which they're treating it is, we're assuming asbestos. We are assuming the worst kind. The kind that we all want to avoid, hence they're requiring them to do the treatment. So I think if I understand your question, and maybe I don't, if the certified person who's required to be there determines that there is a reason to stop, i.e. it's not wet enough, but I don't know what it could be, to be honest with you, then they can stop it. Those individuals can stop it. That is their function.
That was.
If there's something else comes up, there are people in place to stop it.
Okay. I'm good.
Tim?
I'm sorry. So we had talked about a couple of different reasons why you did not recommend the passage of this, and we've taken care of at least talking about some of the liability, that sort of thing. I mean, just boil down for me, what is it really that makes it so you don't recommend it?
The original recommendation has a lot to do with the idea of exposing our personnel to potentially hazardous material. It's quite, if I boil it down and I make it as simple as it exists in my head most of the time, that is the concern. That is a little bit of a challenge. It's not necessarily, an expenditure. It's not necessarily, or a large expenditure. It's not necessarily a loss of our productivity. When we're not sure, when we're treating things with asbestos, that throws up some red flags for us with regard to our personnel and also the long-term liability of the city. Those things give us pause.
Mike?
So, Tony, so at this time, with the information you've been able to gain since the last time we discussed this, have you updated your recommendation to we should do it now? You think enough things have been put in place to protect our employees and our liability to change our mind, or what are you? It sounds like to me like we might be there.
Your Honor, I'm not sure if, to being candid, I'm not sure if I'm completely there. I am much better than I was when this whole thing started, largely because of having the certified individual there. It still gives me some concern.
So this is not a perfect situation, but it's an opportunity for us to join with Shoshone and take advantage of a set of circumstances that are kind of put in our way and given an opportunity. There's an opportunity here to save Shoshone a considerable amount of money. They've got the permits, to put the asbestos in the landfill. They have the permits to haul it. They have the directions that the DEQ would require for remediation. To follow that, the DEQ recently adds on to that, well, we better have an asbestos guy there. And so they're making arrangements to accomplish that. So it just depends on how much heartburn you have over it. And to tell you the truth, talking to Scott Peters, the mayor of Shoshone, he says, I'm not going to be mad at you guys if you don't show up. Mike?
I guess I feel like with the additional things that they've done, and I think they've definitely shown the willingness to do whatever it needs to keep people safe. And I think, there's a definite public hazard over there with those buildings. I would hate to say, oh, we didn't help and they didn't get it done, and some kids got in there and something collapsed and somebody got killed. And so I think this is a real public hazard for Shoshone. And I also think that I would hope that if Riverton was in a similar situation and we asked for the help of the other communities in our county, I think it would be nice to think they would come and help us too. So I think in that vein, I would vote to approve this.
Kyle?
I can understand where you're coming from, Tony, but remediation of hazardous materials, especially asbestos, in a confined area is one thing. But since this is in Wyoming and on the main street of Shoshone, where the wind seldom doesn't stop blowing, the amount of measurable, fractionable material, I don't think you can measure it. And so I understand where you're coming from. The safety of employees is always at the forefront. But I think the mitigating circumstances with the DEQ being there, and they have in-house specialization on asbestos and asbestos removal, because they were out at the plant when I was doing it, and they were watching like the chicken watching her chicks. And so I feel that I am very comfortable with us helping out Shoshone and would like to do it.
Ready? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye. Motion passes. We're going to skip 13. Number 14 is ordinance 18-008, third and final reading, off-street parking. Would the city clerk please read ordinance number 18-008 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 18-008 on third and final reading. An ordinance amending Title 15 Buildings and Construction to revise Chapter 15.36 Off-Street Parking Requirements of the Riverton Municipal Code and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 18-008 on third and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this ordinance? Would the city clerk please conduct a roll call vote?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilman Lance Scody.
Aye.
Councilman Tim Hancock.
Aye.
Councilman Mike Bailey.
Aye.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Rebecca Schatze.
Aye.
Mayor John Baker.
I vote aye, and the motion is passed. Resolution number 1379, off-street parking guidelines. Community Development Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The document you have before you is you've seen this for a while. In a nutshell, we would go from our parking minimum structure to a parking maximum structure. And given the length of time that we've been looking at this document, I'll tell an anecdotal story from this Monday. I met with a semi-national retailer that is very, very interested in moving into either the Kmart building or the Safeway building. And when we were touring the Kmart site, I mentioned that this was up for third reading and that with the passage or the adoption of these guidelines, he would likely be able to subdivide that front portion of that lot and put what in their world they call pads. So something very similar to a Taco Bell or the bank in front of Walmart, the battery store. He was very, very excited about that and asked if I would email him immediately in the morning if the resolution passed. So with that, again, this has been in front of us for quite a while. I feel fairly confident in the completeness of the document, and if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1379 to establish off-street parking guidelines.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. We've really looked at them, haven't we? Okay. Are we satisfied that we're going the right direction? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and the motion passes. Hit the key, send the email.
Very exciting.
Okay, public hearing ordinance numbers 18-010, 18-011, and 18-012. Community Development Director's report, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. All three of these ordinances are strictly an update in nomenclature and in an effort to bring consistency to our code. In 2017, the nomenclature for our residential zones and our zoning changed. However, portions of our code were still referencing the old nomenclature. So this is an effort to update that, specifically with the abandoned vehicles and the trailers more than 20 feet. The third ordinance is when we passed our fencing regulations and guidelines here in July, we set the maximum shrub and fence height at 4 feet at an intersection for a site triangle. However, our fence or our hedge and tree section still referenced a maximum height of 36 inches. So to consistently, it didn't make sense to have one say 36 and one say 48 inches. So with this change, it would bring everything to 48 inches tall. With that, I would answer any questions that you might have on any of the ordinances.
Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the public hearing? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I now declare the public hearing to be open. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes and with other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium and identify yourselves for the record. Is there
Your Honor, seeing none, I would
well.
vote.
none? Okay,
I would move that we close public hearing.
okay. Kyle moved to close the public hearing, seconded by Mike Bailey. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes, and I now declare the public hearing to be closed. Consideration of ordinance 18-010, first reading, abandoned vehicles. Will the city clerk please read ordinance number 18-010 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 18-010 on first reading. An ordinance amending Title 10 Vehicles and Traffic to revise Chapter 10.28 Abandoned Vehicles, Section 10.28.020, keeping or parking of vehicles prohibited when, of the Riverton Municipal Code, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 18-010 on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Lance,
Your Honor.
go ahead.
Mr. Carr, it isn't really related specifically to the changes that you've recommended. Those make a lot of sense. But I just wanted to clarify, as far as enforcement of parking, keeping or parking of vehicles, so as I'm reading this, keep, store, park, maintain, or otherwise permit an inoperable or unlicensed vehicle in an area, zone, et cetera, unless screened from view. So it doesn't matter number of days. As soon as it's inoperable, it is in violation of this ordinance. Or unlicensed, it is in violation of this ordinance.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Correct. Unless it's screened from view, which you can have a tarp over it or some sound device or a fence, or screened from ordinary public view.
Your Honor.
Kyle?
Does that mean that I can take an inoperative, put it on blocks, take the tires off, but as long as I throw a tarp over it?
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
Is that what that means?
Your Honor. Correct.
Yuck.
And then after the wind's blown the tarp for about 6 months,
Yeah.
I suppose there's pieces of that vehicle that are now no longer screened from view.
Yeah. Is there some way we can fix that? I mean, I think the intent is that if it's screened from view, that it's behind a fence or on the property so that it's not an eyesore. I don't know what the definition of eyesore is. I just know when I see it.
Your Honor.
Or the definition of screened, for that matter, because
Well, I know
tarp is screening versus a fence is screening.
a fence, I know what a fence looks like,
Yeah, correct.
you know.
Yeah.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I would be more than happy to make any amendments or changes or propose additional verbiage that might be more appropriate.
Okay, we can visit that in between, right?
Yes.
Go ahead, Tim.
I guess just in reference to that, the way that code enforcement was done with it was that's what they've treated screened from public view as to mean, a tarp, or anything that would make it so it's not seen. I agree with you. When you read this, you could say, well, being screened from view, the intent is to not have an eyesore out there on the on the street. So I think if we don't like that idea of being screened being anything, like putting a tarp over it, then, yeah.
Well,
Might be the time to change it now.
but, you know, when you say screen and you've got 47 cars that are abandoned in this, like this, and you've got tarps over them, that's unsightly also. I mean, Mike wouldn't be allowed to do that on his property. Everybody would go, ugh. And for us to allow that in R1, R2, R whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's not, it goes against our goals as city to allow that to occur. I know, that might put a hardship on some people. Sell it. Put it on a wreck. Get rid of it, you know?
Do you have any language?
Tim, come on, get going.
Maybe we could ask for some language that would be in line with that for the next reading?
Your Honor,
Yes?
that would be very appropriate.
Thank you.
I think if we checked some of the other ordinances in our state, I'm sure we can come up with some better wording than screened.
There might be something different there. Okay. So we're not totally happy with that. Do you want to go ahead and pass it on first reading?
We'll pass it on first reading with the understanding we're going to wordsmith the screen.
That's why we do it 3 readings.
Yeah.
So that's why there's 3 readings. Okay.
There's nothing about the title that this would be in conflict with to make that change as well either at the next reading. So I think.
Okay.
Call for the question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passed on first reading. Consideration of ordinance 18-011, first reading, parking of 20-foot trailers. Would the city clerk please read ordinance 18-011 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 18-011 on first reading. An ordinance amending Title 10, Vehicles and Traffic, to revise Chapter 10.16, Stopping, Standing, and Parking Generally, Section 10.16.110, Vehicles 20 feet long or more not to park on certain streets at night of the Riverton Municipal Code, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 18-011 on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
What does certain mean? What does certain mean? It says certain streets. Does that mean odd, even? What does that mean?
Certain streets. Does that have to do with the width of the street?
It has to do with the way they're zoned. So you can't park them in areas that are zoned that way. So it's saying those streets that are in residential R1, R2, R2A, R3 area, R4A, you can't park them in those certain streets. So if it's somewhere else, if it's in a commercially zoned area, you could.
Okay,
So that's the certain of it.
certain. Okay,
Your Honor, that's correct.
okay. Any other questions? So in reading it, I noticed that recreational vehicles seem to have some kind of an exemption.
Your Honor, that's correct.
Okay, so it would be against the rules to park a flatbed trailer on the street that was more than 20 feet in length, but you could pull in there with a 40-foot motorhome and park it indefinitely? And if that's the case, what's the difference? Why would we, if the 20-foot trailer, I never could understand this, so bear with me. I've been thinking about this for 10 years, okay? What's the difference between a 19-foot trailer and a 20-foot trailer?
1 foot?
Your Honor. I can absolutely answer that question.
This wasn't a math problem?
How many years of engineering school did you do?
I'm sorry, one
One is the answer.
foot.
So the justification for this, I guess, is the question, okay? If it's okay to put a 19-foot trailer and leave that on the street, and we add one additional foot to that, now it's not. So where does the 20, what makes 20 the magic number? Okay, what does that accomplish for us? That we can, so that when we go, when our code enforcement person goes out and knocks on the door and says, oh, that trailer, I measured it and it's 21 feet long, you can't park it on the street. Okay, and then the guy right across the street has got an 18-foot camper there, and he can park it there all day long.
Your Honor, that's correct.
That's what it says.
That's exactly what it's.
Okay, but it doesn't make any sense to me. Tony?
Your Honor, I'm lucky to have, maybe not lucky is the right word, have had these questions come before me in the past. The short answer is, at some point, somebody draws a line and says, this long. It, for all intents and purposes, is largely an arbitrary length. 20 foot, 21 foot, 22 feet. Sometimes recreational vehicles are exempted simply because most of the time we say, okay, if you keep your RV there, we understand that that's probably used more, and we would assume that it is operable and licensed, going back to the previous one. However, there's no magic standard why 20 versus 21 or 19. It's simply that at some point you want to say, or communities have chosen to say, here's about where we're at.
I wonder what the average length of a pickup truck is. Would it have anything to do with that? You know, in other words, rolling stock, something that you drive every day, you could park on the street. If it was longer than that, maybe then you'd say, well, that might be the issue. Mike?
Well, and I guess to me, there's a distinction between a vehicle that you drive, which an RV would be a vehicle you drive, as opposed to a trailer, which is more likely to be sat there and not driven away. Or maybe we want to get to, you know, the parking is not made for long, it's short-term parking. You can only, I know one time, this has been back 30-something years ago, I got a ticket because my wife was pregnant and she was on bed rest and she was home in bed and her car sat for more than, if I remember right, 11 days, and I got a ticket because her car had not moved for a certain amount of days. I was getting in mine and going to work every day, but hers wasn't. And so I think the intent is to not have vehicles or trailers or whatever left on the street and not be just for short-term parking, which is maybe where we're trying to get to, as opposed to how big the vehicle is, how long, whether 19, 21, 18, 14, whatever is there. So
Obviously, you could detect that if the tires on the trailer are flat. Lance?
The other thing is a difference between the previous ordinance is the sunup and sundown in this reference. Between sundown and sunup, like there's some old reference to vehicles parked overnight that this was attempting to address, which again probably predates all of us to know why that was the case, unless you happen to know.
Your Honor, I don't. It's an arbitrary.
But I would agree that, I mean, it shouldn't matter whether it's 14 foot, 20 foot, sundown, sun up, like having some consistency of what vehicles can be parked at what times.
for how long?
For how long. And not get too lost in, well, what the length is, what the time of day is, so that we can not have these, because in 20 years from now, when city council is looking at amending this ordinance, and we did something wacky to it, they're going to go like, what were they thinking? Because like, what's what we're thinking? Between sundown and sunup, I don't.
Yeah. And I can certainly understand the issue of parking a trailer close to an intersection, because it could very easily block the view of traffic coming one direction or the other. I can understand that. That'd be like the fence, okay? So if it was within a certain distance of the corner, it couldn't be any taller than 4 feet, right? So it didn't obstruct view. I can understand that. Okay,
Your Honor.
go ahead.
The other thing is this 20 feet. Most people park within 20 feet or very close to their driveways, and that obstructs viewing when you have an object 8 feet tall, 4 feet out into the area. But, you know, I would be guilty most of the time of parking my 24-foot motorhome right in front of my house to unload it between sunup and sundown, or sundown and anyway, at night, and because you come home late. But I think what we want to do here is we want to minimize long-term parking on our streets. Length of vehicle, you know, I would prefer not to have a Peterbilt parked in front of my house, a double hookup.
Double trailer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess if you do look around town, you're going to see there are a lot of smaller trailers. And the one that I'm thinking of right now, for example, is the Cloud Kisser trailer that you'll see parked around town. And sometimes even overnight, you know, depending. And those, that's not as much of an obstruction. I think there is a point to the length being at issue. And that is just, you know, how much of an eyesore it is, how much room it's taking up where people could be parking, could be doing things. So if you were to change this and say, let's just get rid of that size and say no parking trailers at all between sundown and sunup, there would be a lot of people impacted by that, just in the amount of small trailers I've seen around town. So.
Utility trailers, you know, 2-axle, not 4-axle, not, you know, not heavy duty, but bumper pull, small trailers that are hauling a single four-wheeler utility. There are, on 16th, there must be 10 of those just sitting out front. And, you know, like you say, where are you going to put them now?
Lance?
Well, and I think for me, I like to look at this as somewhat of a community appearance issue. And I made a decision, I owned a 14-foot camper. And I could have legally parked it on the street, but for me, and I don't know, maybe I just was worried that it would be unsightly parked in front of my house, I have 2 streets, and so I paid for it to be stored. I paid a business in the community to store my trailer because it's protected there. It's you know, it had a gated fence, closed access. I could get to it 24 hours a day if I needed to, but I had a certain expectation of safety for it. But it was also helped kind of keep the opening of my home open. Like, other than my wife and my car, you know, which come and go and are operable. So maybe it's a bigger issue and I don't know if this necessarily tonight we're going to solve that, but I think there's maybe something to that, is the appearance in our community of multiple single axle, double axle trailers parked out, cargo trailers parked out front. Are they legally allowed to? Yeah, I guess. When are we going to cut off that, you know, it's 14 foot, it's 16 foot, it's 20 foot. We're going to miss some. There's going to be some people who are like, whew, I only have a 12-footer, and so the new number was 14, so I'm fine. So I just get to keep parking it. But should they? Is it make our community look less than? Because there's, yeah.
Mike? And again, I think it still comes down to a period of time, because in your example, if you were going to go camping and you wanted to pull your camper and sit in front of your house on Thursday so you and your wife could get it loaded up on Thursday and Friday night and then leave, I don't see where that's a big deal. So to me, it comes down to how long it's going to sit there is, to me, more important than how big it is. So whether you have a 14-foot camper or a 36-foot camper,
Right.
it's that I don't want it to sit there all summer in front of your house,
Right.
but for a day or two or whatever is not going to be a big deal. And we're not
Right.
wanting to restrict people
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
actively using the things that they have. It's the guy that's got 2 trailers blocking the whole sidewalk.
And they
never
stay there
moves.
year-round.
They stay there all the time.
Right.
So you're against permanent parking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the public streets are made for long-term parking.
Well, it would sure alleviate if we ever went to snow removal. I mean, you try and remove snow in some areas, and, I don't see how you'd do it.
Can hardly get a blade down the road.
Yeah, no, you couldn't. And there's ordinances where there is snow removal, you cannot park there, period, when the snow season is on. So,
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I would be happy to make any revisions and
We'll take a look at that
Is-
in the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay? And see if there's, if there's something that we can do to maybe punch that whole section up, okay? Besides just change the zoning numbers. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Are we ready to vote on that?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor votes aye, and it passes on first reading. Consideration of ordinance number 18-012 on first reading, hedges and trees. Will the city clerk please read ordinance number 18-012 by title only?
Yes, Your Honor. Proposed ordinance number 18-012 on first reading, an ordinance amending Title 12, Streets, Sidewalks, and Public Places to revise Chapter 12.20, obstructions of view at intersections, Section 12.20.010, obstructions of view at street intersections prohibited of the Riverton Municipal Code, and repealing all ordinance or parts of ordinances in conflict therewith and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 18-012 on first reading.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
I can see why you were thinking of doing this. We're looking for references to the old height that we were talking about, but it seems like the whole purpose behind this ordinance was to prevent people from having tall shrubs or tall fences when you're at an intersection, so that you're obstructing the view, you're making it harder for people to be able to see around. I mean, that's the whole point of it at the end of C, that we're talking about those areas where you want to have things be shorter. I understand the point of wanting to increase this because we allowed it in other places to be from 36 up to 48, but any thought about, I mean, are we going to be sitting there obstructing our intersections if we change this, or what do you think?
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
So the fencing regulation has always been 48. You could have a solid fence at an intersection specifically, and it has always been 48. So to consistify the code, bringing a hedge, which may or may not be see-through as well, it seemed appropriate.
So are you saying at C, we had already changed that? 12.20.010C, that had already been changed? The fence?
I think he's meaning the other ordinance that we changed.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Correct. So when we adopted the fencing guidelines in July,
Yeah.
that references the 48 inches.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
Go ahead, Lance.
Is it possible C is unnecessary in this ordinance, or do we, because of the other ordinance we did in July? Like, there's no, I mean, I see what you're trying to do is to make them the same, but is it possible the other one is enforceable instead of this? Or do we don't need it in two places?
Your Honor, that's a great question. The fencing guidelines don't necessarily deal with hedges as much. It is mentioned.
Right.
However, this particular section, the section, or Title 12, Street, Sidewalks, and Public Places, more specifically, obstructions of view at street intersections. That's why this particular code exists.
All right. Maybe it's necessary that it be in both. But I kind of agree with Tim that we're actually blocking more view by raising it to 48 to be consistent than leaving it 36 at these, at least C at the intersection. But I suppose even shrubs at an intersection would be the same issue, is that you're increasing the blockage.
What was the fence change? There was another one that was in conjunction with. What was the other ordinance? I was trying to find that. The other fencing change.
Your Honor, I'm not sure.
We didn't just change the fencing just with 12.20.010. There was another spot where we changed fencing so that it was 48 inches. Just recently.
That would have been the guidelines.
Yeah, the guidelines by change.
We repealed the ordinance and it put in place adoption of the fencing guidelines.
Okay.
Very similar to what we did tonight with the parking guidelines.
That's right, I remember.
I'm sorry. So
Go ahead, Lance.
just another thought. Since this specifically references at street intersections versus the parking or the fencing guidelines, which are fences at any point virtually other than at intersections, that if it's along a property, in between properties, in behind a property, at the front of a property, but that don't exist at an intersection, I think we could say 4 feet is fine, but this one references specifically at intersections. I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I think it should be 36 inches at an intersection, that it doesn't need to be consistent at 48. Is that maybe I'm...
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
the fencing guidelines delineate intersections of alleys with a shorter fence or a widened fence. And the fencing guidelines also discuss fencing at intersections on corners, as well as fencing in front yards. So the fencing guidelines delineate all the way around the block, including the alleys. And so those site triangles are discussed in the fencing guidelines as well. And whereas that was 48 inches.
I see.
Based on
Two lots, it can be 6 foot, right?
7 feet without.
7 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just got to go down to 4 feet.
Right.
So that there's visibility.
Right.
You can't put a 7-foot fence all the way around your property. If
Right.
people can't see around the corner.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
it's also important to denote that this is measured from the curb line. So if you have an elevated yard, it's still 4 feet from the curb line, not 4 feet from how tall the hedge is. So if the yard is elevated 1.5 feet, you would only have 2.5 feet that you could grow that shrub before you'd exceed the 4 feet.
I guess it still doesn't make sense to increase it at the intersections. That's just my thought. It seems
It almost seems like we leave this 36 and change the guidelines to 36
At the
at intersections. Because honestly, we can change the guidelines by resolution, whereas we'd have to change this through 3 readings. and we don't want to raise it. I mean, it seems like we're saying intersections should be less than 4 foot, irregardless of the weird bushes that are 2.5 foot or whatever, but.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
I would like to point out that the fencing guidelines have always been 48 inches, so there's all kinds of fencing around town that meets the requirement. If you would like to leave shrubs at 36, that would be fine. It really makes no difference, I think. But in order to allow those fences and those hedges that are already in place at 48 inches, again, this was just to bring more consistency to the code, so.
But this has been 36 at the intersections, though, for however long this has been around, though.
Correct.
But the fencing could be 48.
No,
Just
36.
Fencing is still 36 in here.
No.
This ordinance has been 36. The proposal is for the fencing as well as the shrubs to go up to 48.
Can we just grandfather the people that already have a 4 foot or a 4 foot fence?
I don't think anybody should because of this ordinance. That's the point.
Yeah.
See, they're in conflict.
So then you'd be saying grandfathering anybody that's done it in the last however many weeks it's been since we changed the fencing
Right.
guidelines.
Right.
So, but this deals with shrubbery, right? Or does it deal with fences, tree, any obstruction? Does it deal with any obstruction, or is it specific to shrubs?
Your Honor, it's because of the title of the ordinance, it specifically deals with any shrubs or hedges. And then in C, it says any fences in height. So that's definitely in conflict with the fencing guidelines.
Okay, so I guess you've got some more homework to do on this. Maybe you could you put a little packet together and send it out email that shows what we did with the fencing guidelines and other places that this comes into play, so that we can look at it between now and 2 weeks from now. And then my suggestion, Tony, would be that we don't put this on consent.
Okay.
Okay? So that we can talk about these. We're going to want to talk about them on second reading, and so let's not even start out by putting them on consent. Okay?
Yes, Your Honor. And for clarity, are we talking only the fencing one, or are we talking?
All three.
Okay, yes.
All three. There's been questions on all three of them, so. And we're kind of, I think we're kind of looking at them from the standpoint of, maybe we want to make some additional changes or something like that, so.
Yes, sir. We'll get it done.
Okay, thank you. All right. Are we ready to, do you want to move ahead on this then? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any,
No.
no,
Nay.
let me. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay.
Nay.
And what did you say, Rebecca?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, aye. Nay, nay. Okay, it passes on first reading. Mayor votes aye. Council committee reports and council members roundtable. Rebecca,
Yes.
we'll start with you.
All right. Lance, you want me to give a little brief on the solutions?
Please.
So we actually, in the past week, we had a Parks Committee meeting and a Solutions Committee meeting. We had our Parks Committee meeting last night. We are now into the phase of actually writing down on paper our short-term, immediate, short-term, and then long-term goals. Immediate would be right-of-way type goals for each park, 3 to 5 years, and then 10 years or more goals. So we actually sat down last night for about 2 hours and only discussed city parks. So Normally, we're fast moving, but last night we're kind of stuck on City Park, which will be I think that is our most difficult park that we've had so far. And then we'll just continue doing that through the next few meetings. We're still meeting every other week. And hopefully soon we'll gather enough information to present to council our goals. We also have our, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet on the Facebook page. I told you guys about it last time, our little game that we're doing with the parks to get more people in the parks. So they just posted one today. I last looked at it before the meeting. We already had, I think, 2 selfies on there, so pretty exciting. With the Solutions Committee, we meet every other Thursday. And this last meeting, we were tasked with bringing a public event that we could hold within the city to bring the community together and then promote positive things. Several ideas were thrown out, which we'll be looking forward to making public soon. Nothing solid yet, though, but really great ideas with that. We discussed a little bit further the habitual drunkard ordinance as well, and we feel like that is just about ready to present again with modifications. And then, of course, the splash pad, which you guys already know. We had that on the agenda tonight with the splash pad committee. So those are the 3 things that I attended just this last week.
Thank you, Rebecca. Kyle?
Got nothing to do with it, but since I live off Main Street was opened up, and with the results of Main Street being opened up, I noticed substantial amount of usage of the park, and it's just one interesting thing that the more you allow something to be used, more people populate it, and we have less habituals around, which is really cool. And I think the way they have finished off the sidewalk, the curb and gutter next to the city park is really cool. Thank you. Second thing is, over the weekend, I had a privilege to talk with an elected representative that refused to allow me to use his name, but in the crux of the conversation, it was stated that the hospital is here and here to stay and here to make a profit and here to serve the public. And so I was happy about that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. Mike?
Again, I don't have any committee reports, but again, I think I was very impressed with the splash pad group and the amount of community support they got. Again, it makes you proud to be a resident of Riverton, Wyoming, and see how the community comes out and supports these different events that go on and these different causes. And it shows people who put their money where their mouth is and step up and make things happen. So I think that a lot of credit goes to that team and everybody who did it and the community as a whole. I was also involved, the Riverton Hockey Association had their fundraiser this weekend, and they raised about $40,000, which I think is amazing. And again, a lot of community contributions to that silent and live auction and that kind of stuff. And so again, it's just really warms your heart to see the people of Riverton and Fremont County come out and support these events. And we've always done very good. We've got the Empty Bowl dinner coming, down the pike to help the VOA and all the stuff that they do in the community. And so I think it's just an amazing place to live. And I'd like to echo what Kyle said, is that I think the hospital has come out and made some really good announcements. And, I think we're moving forward in that process, and I see it as a positive thing. And I think, it's a difficult situation, but I think everybody's working toward a positive resolution for that. So, thank you.
Tim?
So I've been really excited to have the splash pad get somewhere. This has been a long time, and I was looking at some of the comments on County 10, which I've said this before, it's just never a good idea, but
Stop doing it.
it was interesting to me to see that there are people that were commenting, number one, is there a way we could vote on where it is? Because we don't like the idea of it being at City Park. And I was wanting to comment on there, but whenever you do that, it just does more harm than good, so I didn't. But the point of this is that it's not the government rushing in and saying, hey, we're going to build a splash pad here. This has been an organic effort by people who saw the place they wanted it, and that was part of the reason they even wanted it was for the location, not just to have it, but because they wanted to make more use of City Park. It's not something where, it's not something where we're rushing in there, or the city, or anything like that to try to make things better. It was something where citizens were wanting to do it, and they've been wanting to have a location for it. So I think it's really a lesson for all of us that if there's something that you want in the community, if there's something that you feel would be beneficial, it's incumbent upon us to do something about it and not just wait for something to be done. It surprised me how many people were commenting and didn't even know that this was out there. Like, this is the first they'd ever heard of it. They didn't even know this was in the works, and it's like, are you living in the same community we are, where they've had so many fundraisers for it over the years? But I think the point is we've had a lot of really good effort by citizens to make positive changes in the community, and I think we're trying to do the same thing. Every day that we're here, we're trying to do that. We've heard a lot of comments from people talking about how they're wanting to have fewer of, drunks on the street, people that are not making the best choices or making the town a lot worse for other people to be. And, the police department has been arresting multiple individuals. It's part of the reason I was just looking at the jail bill. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but our jail bill for June, was it June? Was the highest we've ever had one. Now that's kind of a negative thing, right, in the sense that it's money that's being spent. But on the other hand, it's a positive thing in that we're trying to respond, and I think the police department is trying to respond to citizens saying, hey, if there's something going on, we want people arrested, we want something done. The judge is trying to respond. She's been having people actually serve jail sentences, part of it to incentivize people going to treatment, that sort of thing. So I guess the point is I think citizens don't realize what's being done in their community. A lot of people didn't even realize the splash pad was in the works until they saw an article in County 10, which was the first time they heard of it. A lot of people don't realize how many people are being arrested on a daily basis by the police department, how many efforts they're doing to try to get people treatment. And there's money that's being put into that from the city council. So I think I would hope that people, before they come before the council to say that they want something done differently, that they actually look into what's being done anyway. So just a little bit of a soapbox on, I think, a lot of good efforts by a lot of people here, including the police department, including the splash pad committee, and I just hope that the town keeps going the same direction it's been going, which I think has been in a great direction. So,
Thank you. Lance?
Yes, Your Honor. A couple of things. Councilwoman Schatze and her husband and myself and my wife and several others were able to attend Paws and Pearls a week and a half ago, one of the major fundraising events, and I certainly agree with Mike in everybody's comments that there's just a variety of opportunities of community members coming together and supporting things in our community. Paws and Pearls, Hockey Association, domestic violence, the Purple Ball coming up. There's always something going on in those areas for community services, and I think it's always hard to attend every single one of them, but we try to attend what we can, and the Paws and Pearls was a fantastic event. There was tons of auction items, great auction items. It was a lot of fun. We had a very good time. I attended the Maine and federal reopening event last week, just to echo Councilman Larson's comments and just to add as well that they noted that they are 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Thank goodness for Mother Nature and good weather, good construction weather. They're making fantastic progress and just doing an excellent job. And it was great to kind of come together again for an event and recognize the things that are going on in the community, that being one of the big ones. And lastly, we had a District 25 Rec Board meeting last night. Did the obligatory paying of bills as far as the normal things that the committee does. But we also voted on Volunteers of the Year. The District Board, the Rec Board nominates and either sometimes it's individuals, sometimes it's groups, sometimes it's a combination of both. We had two very deserving individuals. I'm not going to name them at this time because they will be announced at the school board meeting on October 16th. But we have two
Can you
very.
keep it a secret
I
that long?
I know. I don't. It just happened last night, and I don't even know that they know yet. So this
Is it in
gives
your
it.
notes there?
It isn't. Oh wait, maybe it is. Perhaps. So that's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you. Lance, City Administrator?
Thank you, Your Honor. We spent a wonderful day over in Thermopolis at the Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivision Committee meeting. I said it with a straight face. There was actually a lot of very interesting legislation that was being discussed. Mayor Baker gave testimony on a couple items, and that's very helpful as we work with WHAM and for our elected officials to actually hear that. Those items that we talked most about were there's a bill being considered on stormwater legislation, which would allow cities the ability, not the requirement, but the ability, if they so choose, to make stormwater into a utility. As you know, with our community and with our budget, that is something that is paid out of general fund. There's been a great deal of discussion at the legislative level about funding, about how we receive it, how we, what a city is allowed to do. We know that we don't have a lot of options. Not that we should use every option, but sometimes we seem to have a lack thereof. And that's one of those items that is being discussed. In that same vein, there's also the discussion of the ongoing, ever-present discussion of a local option sales tax for specific to a community that doesn't go countywide. So that was discussed last term, last go around. It's being discussed this time again. And then finally, the development of legislation that would allow for a community development district, which would essentially allow for funding of different items, everything from recreation to any number of items within a particular area that is defined, assuming that the landowners voted that in. That's not necessarily a vote of a council, that's a vote of a that would create a political subdivision. So that was discussed. Some of those items one of those items was move forward. The stormwater kind of moved forward a little bit, and the other two were largely tabled, is my memory. Is that correct, Mayor?
Largely,
Yes.
yes.
So we spent the day doing that. As Councilwoman Schatz denoted, the habitual ordinance is still on the plate. We had some changes. If you'll remember our discussion, there was some comments about how that's posted, how that notification happens. There's some language we needed to work out. We didn't want to rush that language for you, and so we knew that it wasn't a giant rush right now. So we took a step back. We noticed that we would say it'd be this meeting or the next meeting, so it's the latter of the two. If there are any comments on that throughout, please let me know, and we'll be happy to either try to answer those or be ready to have that discussion. A couple quick items. Urban Systems Advisory will be held on the 20th. Staff will be attending that. RECDA will be on the 26th at 7:30 a.m. It's at the Sundowner. I would give some credit, if you're on Facebook much, and we all are at one point or other usually, you'll notice that one of the events that is being put on is Coffee with the Cop, scheduled for October 3rd. It's going to be at Brown Sugar. Do I have those dates right? Okay, making sure. That's something that Chief Murphy put together, and he deserves some credit for that. Having that conversation in the community, we say coffee with the cop, you don't have to drink coffee. Just, it's an opportunity to engage with our community, and we're looking forward to that. And we'd encourage anybody to attend if they have the opportunity. That's going to be, it's not a one-time item. Chief Murphy's put that together to be, are we saying monthly? That's going to be a monthly item, and it will move around. So we'll be advertising that again through Facebook events and the like. So we look forward to having that conversation. Last thing is Airport Board will be this Friday. And as Councilman Godey mentioned, there's a lot of things going on in the community, and the Purple Ball is another one of those items that happens the week before the Empty Bowl. And if you'll remember, it's the first event I ever attended in Riverton. And Councilman Peterson was kind enough to forward everybody the picture when I had the giant pitcher of water dumped on me at the time. So it was a great event. I remember seeing some of you there. So thank you very much. That's all I have for now. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions for Tony? Okay. So as we drove to Thermop and read these bills that we were going to discuss at the meeting this morning, one of them, this special district thing, okay, one of the things that specifically allows for is recreation. And so it would be possible to form a recreation district, which would be a political subdivision that would have some taxing authority, and I guess that's still kind of up in the air how much that would be allowed, but they could issue bonds and then make assessments to collect, to figure out how to pay for the bonds. And so that would be a funding source for a special district. And it's interesting to see that it includes that beyond just, what we'd normally think about in special improvement districts of streets and roads and sidewalks and sewer systems and that type of thing. So it's a little broader in scope, and so that was pretty positive. I thought there's last week we had the WAM Region 4 meeting in Lander, and I attended that, and we had a presentation prior to that meeting from Homeland Security on all hazards preparedness, but the focus there at that meeting was a long-term power outage and how to deal with that. Some of you may be familiar with the 72-hour kit concept, where you're supposed to, put enough stuff together in a bucket or a backpack so that you could, in an emergency situation, you could grab that and run, and it would take, it'd cover you for 72 hours. They did a tabletop study of the 1949 blizzard. So that was quite some time ago, but that was quite a snowstorm. And so tens of thousands of cows died. They tried to airdrop hay to them and couldn't do that. There's lots of places in Wyoming that didn't have access for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And so as they actually took a look at it, they decided that a 72-hour prep was inadequate. And so now they've shifted their focus and to 2 weeks ready. And so now they'd like people to have enough stuff on hand to shelter in place for 2 weeks, so that they could, they think maybe in 2 weeks, the National Guard would maybe break through and be able to make a rescue. And then, of course, and then the discussion always came around to some kind of a terrorist attack or something like that that would have more impact on that. We just had a hurricane there in the Carolinas, and they had one there about 20 years ago, and it really had a lot of steam behind it, and so it went way inland before it finally petered out. And at Wilmington, all the utilities are underground because they get a hurricane about every 2 or 3 years. So they put all the utilities underground, and as soon as the water ran back into the ocean, the streets are all built like canals. Then everybody was back in business and going. Raleigh, which is inland quite a ways, all the utilities there are above ground. And there were miles of power lines that were all broken at every pole, laying on the ground. And so it took a long time to restore power in Raleigh. It took them 2 weeks before they had telephone service back. So it would take, and there's some places in northern North Carolina and southern Virginia that went six months without any power. So when you've got that kind of a challenge, you need to have better preparedness. And so that was the message and what cities and towns could be involved in. I'm not sure why they said just for elected officials, but they did. I think the intent is that in the next month or two, say over the next 6 months, they're going to bring this down to community staff level and do that and do a similar thing. I think they really wanted to limit the number of people that were there, and unfortunately, they really did limit the number of people there. And so I think we had a couple people from Lander, a couple people from Thermopolis, a couple people from Casper, and Montana or Pacific Power was there, Rocky Mountain Power was there.
15 people at most, I think.
And so there weren't very many people there. Tim made it for a while, and so it was kind of interesting that they, trying to put this together and that we might be better prepared for that kind of eventuality. And so, but thinking about the recreation thing, it's interesting to me that the hockey guys raised about $40,000 last year. Okay, and then you think, well, I wonder what we could do that would build on that as a community so that we could pull that together. The idea of a massive giant rec center someplace would require lots and lots of money. But what if we focused on making, our Little League fields great, focused on soccer fields great, focused on hockey? Is there some way we could enclose that building? Is there some way we could put a chiller in it?
Yeah.
So that we could make ice?
Year-round ice.
Year-round ice? See, I wonder I don't know what that costs, but I wonder if something like that isn't reachable. See? Okay. Well, we'll think about that and see if there's something that could be done there. Okay. Well, I'm excited about the parks. I think that's great that we're working on parks. Thank you, Rebecca, for being involved in that. And I guess I don't have anything else to say this evening. So, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9 o'clock.